Well, good day everyone. Welcome to a snowy edition of Beyond the Test Drive. It's been a couple years since we've had any snow of significance, so having a lot of fun today. I've also had a lot of fun this week in the CX-90 PHEV. That's right, we have the plug-in hybrid, and I've had it for the week now. Tomorrow we got to turn it in. That's sad, but I have to honestly say I would need way more than a week in this car to unpack it. It has got a lot going on, which I think is cool, and it's fun, and it's got multiple personalities. And the question today is really, does it save any fuel at all with the battery? And is it even fun to drive, much like the inline six? Styling wise though, I will point out that you cannot get the PHEV without the plastic cladding in the black all down around here, and that's perfectly okay because I think in the white the contrast is striking. When we first saw this, I'll throw up the white inline six without the black cladding here so you can contrast it. I'll also put some footage up of when this thing is clean, but this is how your CX-90 is going to look if you live in a northern climate. And again, we've been having a good time with it today. Everything is the same back here. I should mention that we do have the Premium Plus. This is the high end. This is roughly $58,000. One thing I will point out with the PHEV is you get more power back here on this AC. You get 1500 watts. Over here you get 150 watts. The inline six does have the 150 watts, but man, 1500 watts is plenty to go camping in. It's a really useful amount of power, so that's a really nice feature, and you can enable it right there. Again, you do get a spare tire back here, which is always good even with the PHEV because the battery is up there somewhere. They don't lose any space there. Again, check out the other video because that will go into some of these features. This one, unlock that. This one is all black, and I really, if I were going to get this is the interior I would get. This black leather. Again, this is the premium interior, and you do have the captain's chairs. This is considered a 7-passenger configuration, but for all practicality, this is a 6-passenger given the size of the back seat. Again, this is top of the line, so you do get heated seats back here. And what I'd like about this is you do not get that silly center console. So I don't know, it just feels more spacious. It's a little bit more practical if you want to go and store some stuff along here. You do get a big hump here, so a little bit challenging if you have a dog. You want to lay them somewhere, you'll have to put them in the back. You know, I'm a little neutral about this silver sort of snakeskin stuff. It looks really good on the door over there. You know, it's better than shiny black, that's for sure. I do like the black, the matte black that they have in the in some of the other trims. So I wish you could get that on the console here. This kind of looks like a wrap, and but all in all, not complaining. Still much better than shiny piano black. Again, everything looks nice here. You get some nice stitching here. Really elegant looking. This is sort of CX-50ish kind of vibe going on there. But what we really want to look at is under the hood. It's cold. This is where things are interesting. You get that thing way up there. You can extend it as far as you want. But under the hood here, we have a 4-cylinder. This is the 2.5. This is basically, look at this guy. Look at that. So down there, I don't know, can you see down there? That is the steering rack with the electric power steering motor. You can see over there. Oh man, this is so cool. You got so much room. But anyway, the inline six filled all the way out to here. This is the 2.5. You're going to see this across the Mazda lineup. I'm sure there's some changes fundamentally with it, given the fact that this stops and starts constantly, but pretty well sorted. And the business end of this engine, as far as timing chains and belts, is all on the front. But yeah, really simple engine compartment compared to the inline six. There is an electric motor back there. There is a battery back there, and an 8-speed transmission, just like the inline six. Mazda recommends premium fuel, and you will get a total of 323 horsepower at 6,000 RPM and a healthy 369 pound-feet of torque, all at 4,000 RPMs. with the 4-cylinder contributing 189 horsepower, 184 pound-feet, and a 68 kilowatt electric motor providing 173 horsepower and 199 pound-feet of torque. Premium fuel seems silly, but it's recommended, as you will only lose about 4 horsepower and none of the torque if you go with regular. Electricity storage is provided by a 17.8 kilowatt hour battery. Fuel economy is where it gets complicated with these PHEVs, but as a hybrid, this gets 25 miles per gallon overall, pretty much what the inline 6 gets. And if you do charge this up at home, it gets 56 mpge, which will vary wildly depending on your specific use case. All right, so let's go take a drive. Do a little bit of toe for tap here today. Talk a little bit more about price while we fire this up. And that's that you get the preferred, you get the premium and the premium plus. They're all in the 50s. I personally would like to see 1 or 2 trim levels max. I just think the preferred just drops some features that for $52,000 you should have. But when you jump up to the premium plus, you pretty much get everything that you need. Real quick on these displays and drive modes, again, right down here, your drive mode. Again, when you turn this car on, you can set it in there to sort of bias itself to EV mode. EV mode is where you're just going to be driving on battery, and this is the gauges you get for the EV mode. If I go up to normal mode, the gauges get quite plain looking in normal mode. That's pretty much the hybrid mode here, but Mazda has done a really good job with their digital gauges to keep them simple. And then sport mode, you get the classic. These things do take a little while to turn. Sport mode, you get a tachometer and looks just like a regular car. And then finally, EV, you get an off-road mode also here. 3,500 pounds towing for this. There is no tow modes or anything like that, but 3,500 pounds, whereas in the inline 6, if you go up to Turbo S, you get 5,000 pounds. So something to keep in mind there. You do get on this top trim, you get all your surround cameras, and you get hill descent control, which is super, super nice. A lot of people say that's for off-roading, but I've had hill descent save my bacon coming down a snowy pass out in Colorado in a Toyota Highlander. Excellent, excellent HVAC controls. Not going to get into this system today, but this is, you can touch that. This is wireless Apple and Android Auto, again in this Premium Plus trim. I think the Premium trim adds that also. All right, enough about that. Let's go and talk driving. We'll talk gas mileage. We'll get it out on the highway. But while we tool along here in the park, I'm going to go ahead and put it in the EV mode and go ahead and get the elephant out of the room, and that's EV range. So this is rated at 26 EV miles on a full battery. It's been cold this week. This car has about 7,000 miles on it. Hey, people are sleigh riding again. This is cool to see because this has been rare in these parts the last couple of years. 26 miles, that's what Mazda says. It's been cold this week. The night it was in the 40s. I got about 20 miles on this meter when it was fully charged, and then practically when I took it out on the highway, I got about 15 miles. So, you know, that's, I'm assuming, is pure cold weather related. This morning it was about 25 degrees and I fully charged it and it said I had about 17 miles. And then practically when you get it out there, it's always a couple less, so maybe 15. So charging this every night, this has been, you know, that's an expense. That's probably $4 where, you know, where we live, in electricity charges when you take efficiency and things like that into account. You know, that's not a lot of miles per, you know, that's just not very efficient as far as money goes. But when it comes to driving this, again, I'm in EV mode here. Let's go ahead and put it in EV mode. One thing about the EV mode, it is extremely pleasant to drive in EV mode. This takes a long time to get up to 60, but 9 times out of 10, I have a hard time telling the difference when this flops over from EV mode to hybrid mode, just because in normal everyday driving, you're not going to be flooring it. But from 0 to 20, 0 to 40, 20 to 40 in pure EV mode, you're only getting about half the horsepower. But I have found that plenty in everyday driving. And the most disappointing part about being in EV mode has been when the battery runs out, because it's so pleasant to drive, it's so quiet. But on the other hand, it's very, very natural, because this thing is still shifting through its 8-speed transmission. You still have the turning of the transmission, so there's a little bit of a mechanical feeling to it as you're driving it in EV mode. And again, when the engine comes on in hybrid mode, it's a very subtle difference. It's a very, very smooth transition. So sometimes I've had to look down and go, am I in EV mode or is the engine running? Because it's very, very natural. So anyway, that's the elephant in the room as far as battery range. I'll talk a little bit about one day I did take it out about 140 miles highway trip. I started out on the battery and then I went into hybrid mode. When I ended up that 40-mile trip, I was at about 32 mpgs. That's not a lot more than the inline 6 that we tested. That's very, very close to 30 miles per gallon also. Another good example right now is, again, charging this every night for the last 65 miles. Playing in the snow, a lot of idling, warming the car up, stop and go, just zero highway. I would call it almost like a city environment. Over the last 65 miles, the onboard computer is saying 29. So that's really, really good. Again, you have to factor in the fact that we did charge it for the last couple nights, in addition to the gas to get the 29.2. So I just want a bigger battery. I want more range. Again, if you're in a warmer climate, I'm assuming I'm not getting the 26 because of the temperature. You know, this battery is at the temperature that it is, and range is going to suffer pretty greatly. There's no heater on it. There's no heat pump like you see in like a full EV. But just on a road like this, even though it's a little snowy and slick, this thing is very, very planted. And as the other inline 6 CX-90, this is just a lot of fun to drive. I would dare say, and again, I'd have to drive them back to back. This feel, maybe because of its weight, I feel like this is a little bit more planted. And again, in EV mode, where you get these really, really smooth shifts, and you almost can't even tell that transmission is shifting, this thing is actually a little bit more fun to drive on a road like this, because when you're in a turn, you can kind of goose it a little bit, and it feels purely like a rear wheel drive car, which is how it's biased. Ride quality is Mazda firm. Like in all of their cars, you're gonna feel the road here. The steering has zero play in it. It's fairly slow, but it works really, really well in this type of car. And it's pretty heavy also. Let's just kind of get the brakes on there. Now, we did have this out in some deeper snow this morning, and if you check out any of the other reviews on Mazda's all-wheel drive system, it works really, really well, whether it's in sport mode, EV mode. EV mode, it will kick in the engine regardless. If I want to kick the engine in now that I'm in EV mode, and we're going to do that right here on this uphill dig, you have to go past the stop in the floor. There's a little bit of a button there, and if I push it down, and the motor kicks in, and boy, does she wake up. 60. So this thing really, really does wake up and push it. I have done 0 to 60 runs in this week. I cannot get less than 7 seconds, no matter what I do. And I think it has to do with temperature. I think all the other 0 to 60 runs may have been at a warmer temperature, so the battery may have been able to put out a little bit more oomph. Not quite sure. But no matter what I did, sport mode, I got around 7 seconds versus what I was seeing in some of the reviews, and even you know, some pretty reputable testing houses got like low 6s. So this to me is a little slower in the winter time than the inline 6. But again, here I am, and I just pushed it. It's popped out of EV mode now. And I'll go ahead and go into normal hybrid mode. So in the normal hybrid mode, if I have any battery left at all, it will try to use it up before it kind of goes back and forth. But again, the transition, I have to kind of look down to see if that little blue EV light is even on to know if the motor is on or not. These wipers are driving me nuts in auto. All right, I have to know, I have to look at that blue light because the engine is very, very subdued. They got it really well isolated. It's only when you goose it where there's a lot of pumped in engine noise, and it does sound good. It's synthetic, but it does sound good. But for the most part, this is a really, really quiet drivetrain. And again, the transition back and forth has been, I think, pretty seamless for Mazda's first attempt. Again, I don't know if this one has some updates. This is a fairly newer one off the production line. So I would say in summary, as far as the, you know, it just seems that the motor, the electric motor, the gas motor, the transmission, the battery, the software, it's all working really, really well together here. I almost dare say this transmission is a little smoother. You know what? I'm going to say it's a lot smoother than in the inline 6. Again, because you got a really big, a much bigger, I think 60-some kilowatt electric motor that's getting you off the line and pushing you. Another thing about being in EV mode is, because there is still that 8-speed transmission with the wet clutch, when you're starting out from a stop, you still get a little bit of slip. So again, it contributes to that natural feeling. And then when you come to a complete stop, the EV motor will actually keep running for a little bit, and then it'll stop, and you get a little bit of electric whirring. I have no problems with the electric noise coming out of this. You know, it's an electric car. That's what electric motors sound like. So I have no issue with this sort of electric noise that comes out of this at slow speed when you're on EV mode, or even when you're stopped and it's still spinning. So the only time I find this 4-cylinder to be boomy, so if I hit it pretty hard here, that is, now if I go past the you know, if I push all the way through the floor through that switch to tell it I want full throttle, look at this guy, impressive. If I go past that switch, then the engine really, really booms. Let's do that again. I'm just going to do regular old acceleration where the motor comes on. Look to the right there over that hill. So that's pretty sedate and pretty good. And that's full throttle. Anyway, it's just been interesting to drive. This car has 3 personalities. It has this sort of sedate EV mode that I'm trucking along in here. It has that hybrid mode where the engine's coming off and on, but still pretty sedate unless you really lay into it. And then you have sport mode. Now this has been the most surprising thing about the PHEV, and that's that, unlike a lot of cars, sport mode just, it helps out a little bit with where the shift points are. Here, when I put this in sport mode, this car truly transforms. So you'll see my gauges here. I get a tachometer now. There's no more worried about battery charge. That battery there now is just there. And it is incredibly lively and responsive. So this is where the PHEV actually shines over the inline 6, because it just wakes it up. It's very responsive and it's playful. And I think even though the inline 6, that drivetrain is fun to drive, this 4-cylinder with that electric motor coming in to help it, and the transmission, it's just very, very fun to drive. The roads are still a little too wet here and slick, but go ahead and 4th. paddle shift. So this is where you will want to use the paddle shifters, because you can just have a lot of fun. And it sounds great, like I said, unless you get it up, you know, high RPMs. But you can see the 6,500 RPM. So this is not an EV anymore. This is not, definitely not a hybrid or a, you know, a plug-in. This is just now a fun, sporty, and if you like to drive, I can see myself actually using this sport mode quite a bit when I want to have a little bit of fun, when I'm not doing 7-passenger SUV thing. So to me, the sport mode on this is why you get this over the inline 6. It's just really, really good, and it transformed this car. This car has a, much like its gas mileage, its performance and its personality will also vary quite a bit. Okay, let's get her out of here. Now that boost light has come on to say that I'm getting some battery boost. It's a little angry, and I like that in a car. Downshifts are really quick there. Go ahead and downshift here to third. Do some downshifting. Little rev match downshift there. Now, I'm not going to do a braking test here. I will tell you that when I first drove this for the first time, the brakes are really touchy. I mean, the grab is right at the top of the pedal. They give you nothing. It probably has to do something with the regenerative nature of this, but the brakes are strong, very natural feeling, very firm. But unlike the inline 6, that bite is right at the top. You know, there is no play. So, you know, they may feel a little touchy if you go out on a test drive. You go, oh, these brakes are really, really touchy. But after you've driven this a couple days, they're fine. All right, let's get her up on the highway here. Oh, it's plenty good. Yeah, really digging the sport mode on this. This engine will turn off as you're driving out here. You'll see this little thing go down in the charge mode. You'll see the EV light come on if you have a little bit more battery than we have now. So pretty quiet. There is no engine noise. There's a lot of wind noise. I think that's from some of the ice that's still in this car up on the roof anyway. It's got some bad aerodynamics right now. So yeah, a little over 2,000 RPMs at 70. So it's not bad. This is geared a little lower in its final drive. I think it's because of that 2.5 doesn't have the torque to keep this thing going and chugging, so I geared a little lower in the final drive. So that's really, you can kind of sense that it's churning a little bit more. I would say that the inline 6 is a better cruiser overall, but this is actually still pretty good. I'm gonna have to wrap this up. I actually spent another day with this because my final thoughts on this were really getting complicated. So I took another day to think about it, and you know, gonna provide like 4 or 5 major points. But the first is just drivability. You know, let's just sum this up by the fact that in the week, 8 days I've had this, not once did I sort of look down at that 8-speed transmission and go, what are you doing? What was that noise? What was that thunk? I truly expected, based on other reviews and based on my first drive of this like 7 or 8 months ago, that this thing was going to be a little rough around the edges. And I can say that my experience has been the opposite. I think this is really well polished. Yes, you do hear the engine start and stop in the hybrid mode. You will notice it slightly, but transmission wise, this thing never misses a beat. So I think Mazda's done a great job here for their first effort. As far as drivability, it's a very polished system and it feels pretty premium to me. Now, the second thing is just performance. I think this is light on its feet. I think it has a lot of spunk and spirit. When you put it in sport mode, it's a lot of fun. Reliability, wow, that's the big one, right? You got a hybrid system with a battery versus that inline six with the turbochargers, and people concerned about the engine maintenance and getting access to it. I don't know, probably about the same. I would not worry too much about this 2.5 in here. It's pretty well sorted. You can get to it, easy access. You got about an 18 kilowatt battery here. You know, I'm thinking, whoops. I'm thinking the 18 kilowatt battery is probably a $2,000 at today's rate plus labor. So I don't think that's going to be horrendous to replace if you ever had to. So let's just hop in here. But people are going to lease these because they are eligible for the $7,500 tax credit in the US. Let's see, the other thing, as far as, you know, pricing wise, you know, that's where, to me, I would not pay this for this car. I still think the best value in the CX-90 is the 280 horsepower S trim. 200, just a turbo, not the S trim, like the preferred plus or the premium, you know, right in the mid to high 40s. I think that's the value play in the CX-90. So for me, but the big sticking point for me anyway, and I thought a lot about this overnight, was the battery range. 26 miles. I've seen people getting up to 30, but that's in ideal conditions. That's already, I think, a little low. And then you put the weather like on this, and, you know, economically, it just doesn't make sense to charge this at the rates and only get 15, 16 miles of range. And it's not like super cold. I think today's like 25 degrees, you know, and I think in the 40s, you know, 15, 16, 18 miles of range. I don't know. I need a bigger battery. I need more range, and I think this is going to evolve to be a really good product and pretty interesting. So I really do appreciate you coming along. We do need to hear from owners regarding this PHEV. We want to know how much you're spending on gas, how much it's costing you to charge, because I do think there's some people out there that would really benefit and save some gas with the PHEV. So we want to hear about you in the comments below. As always, we want to thank you for coming along with us today, and especially our subscribers. Really appreciate you. And if you're not a subscriber, think about it. We'd love to have you along in 2024. So again, thanks for watching today, and have a great day, morning or evening, wherever you may be.